Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mental Golf Show, where we discuss all things golf psychology to help avid golfers improve their game. As always, I'm your host, Josh Nichols. I'm a golf psychology coach, and I've been playing competitive amateur golf for over 20 years. And in this episode of the Mental Golf Show, we have Paul Salter, a mindset coach and hypnotherapist for golfers. It's a little bit different today. We discuss how hypnotherapy has possibly a misconstrued reputation and why Paul believes it can speed up the mental improvement and performance of golfers. We also discuss the amateur golfer's common diet mistakes, how to get premium fuel for your body, how scarcity mentality applies to golf and can affect your game, how long golf improvement should take, how non-judgmental curiosity can help us change the internal rules we've created, what's at the heart of fear of failure, how fear of getting kicked out of the group can fuel playing scared, and the power of clear visualization, and specifically clear visualization of mistakes. But before we get into this awesome and energetic conversation with Paul, let's talk about today's sponsor, the Divot Board. So how do I use my Divot Board? What is the Divot Board? The Divot Board is it's an awesome training aid where it's basically a rectangle that's about 6 inches by 24 inches long that has little sequins, right? So tiny little discs that when you make impact with the turf, the sequins flip over and show you that basically the exact shape of a divot. So hence the name, the Divot Board. So how do I use it? I don't use it for all of my practice, but pretty much every practice that I do, I'll bring out the Divot Board, and after I'm pretty well warmed up and I've been hitting some shots, and I think I know how I'm hitting it, but I don't know exactly how I'm hitting it. So I'll plop down the Divot Board and I'll hit some shots, and it'll show me exactly how I've been hitting it. I'll see, oh, I'm actually hitting, a half an inch behind the ball, and I'm, hitting off a hitting mat it kind of masks bad shots. So me showing myself that I don't hit them all perfect is really, really valuable for me, because when I get out on the course and all of a sudden I'm hitting it heavy on turf, I wouldn't have known that had I not used the Divot Board. So that's how I use the Divot Board. And I think what's probably the most beneficial thing of the Divot Board and how it applies to the mental game is the instant error feedback that the Divot Board gives you. So again, when you're hitting off a hitting mat or even off of regular turf, you can't really see where you made impact with the ground relative to where the ball is. But what's cool about the Divot Board is it has this little yellow circle right in the middle of the whole rectangle, middle of the board, where you put your golf ball. So when you make impact with the board, you can see, okay, my club started first making ground contact right in the middle of that circle, or at the beginning of that circle, meaning I hit a little bit behind it, or well in front of the circle, or I didn't even hit the ground at all. So you can feel those things a lot of times, yes, but to get the exact calibration of the error that you made, that's what the Divot Board is incredibly good at. And from a psychological standpoint, getting instant error feedback is key for actual improvement. One of the tenets of deliberate practice is getting instant feedback, and also having your practice be a little outside your comfort zone, having it be a little more difficult than maybe you're capable of. So when you are practicing from a nice normal lie with no difficulty and you're not really getting much feedback, you're probably not learning a ton. You're basically just exercising. But if you actually do something with your practice and you actually get feedback and you make actual errors, then your brain uses those errors to adapt and change and grow and ultimately become a better golfer, become a better ball striker. So the Divot Board is probably the best tool I've ever used to get that instant error feedback. I think it's awesome. A lot of training aids will encourage doing things the right way. The Divot Board doesn't encourage you to do one thing or another. It just shows you you're not hitting it perfectly. here's what you need to change clearly. So I think the divot board is awesome for that. So how do you get a divot board, and how can you get one at a little bit of a discount? So do this. Go to divotboard.com/mentalgolfshow and use the code mentalgolf10 at checkout to get 10% off any purchase you make there. So you could get a bunch of things. You could get a replacement pad. You could get 3 divot boards or whatever, and you get 10% off of that purchase. So again, that's divotboard.com/mentalgolfshow and use the code mentalgolf10 at checkout. Let's get into this conversation with my guest, Paul Salter. Paul Salter, everybody, welcome to the Mental Golf Show. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Josh. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, of course. Yeah. So for those listening, Paul and I have been batting around back and forth trying to get connected for a while. And Paul sent me a message, and he listed some of the topics that he specializes in and talks about, and uh, every one of them sounded interesting to me. And reading through Paul's stuff, it sounds extremely interesting to me. And I've got questions and thoughts and opinions. And so I'm glad we're finally getting to do this, Paul. But I guess before we get into all that, if you saw someone random on the street or in a social gathering or a party or something, and they said, "Hey, Paul, what do you do?" What do you say to them?
Yes, I say to them, I am a hypnotherapist and mindset coach for golfers, and I help specifically double-digit handicap golfers overcome the mental and the emotional hazards of their minds so they can shoot lower scores and have more fun.
Okay, you will say that entire sentence to them?
I will gauge the room, of course, as you know, but ultimately I could also just say I help you play better golf.
Yes, right. Okay. Yeah, so that's obviously the first word there is the hypnotherapist, and I got a lot of questions about that because I'm extremely curious about the field,
Yeah.
and lacking knowledge about the field. And I would assume, listeners of this podcast have very, very little insight into it, other than some, probably false misconceptions. And but I guess you have a lot of experience working with athletes, different types of people. So maybe you could give us a quick run through of your experience of, how you got to where you are today, how you got into this field in general,
Mhm.
your own, maybe if you have any sporting background or anything like that. So maybe fill us in on who Paul Salter is.
Happy to do so. So I was a multi-sport athlete growing up, but at the age of 16, I was a whopping about 5'1", 110 pounds, desperately trying to keep up with my peers who were bigger, stronger, and faster. And there were 3 points that I attribute my ability to keep up with my bigger, stronger, faster peers to. Number 1, I fell in love with the weight room. Number 2, my mom instilled just a sense of healthy eating that I really took and ran with for the next, decade plus. And then my fascination behind why are the best of the best so much better? Why is LeBron James and Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant leaps and bounds of better than everybody else, despite spending more or less the same amount of time in the gym? What goes on between the ears that separates them? So I just had a fascination with that. And, I took the nutrition, like I mentioned, I ran with that. I earned my degree in dietetics and became a high performance dietitian. My first, official corporate job, if you will, was working with elite college, professional, and Olympic athletes. And to be frank, I had a front row seat with some of the best athletes in the world, and I got to observe them. I got to pick their minds and really understand like what made them click, what separated them from their peers and competitors. And throughout my coaching career as a dietitian, I talked very little about food and nutrition. I always
Mm,
focused on what was going on in their minds and in their hearts. And I carried that with me. And here's where things get a little interesting. I took a little detour throughout my coaching career as a dietitian, playing professional poker. And it
mm,
was here I came up against my own limitations more than I ever had in my life before. My limiting beliefs around money, this scarcity mindset, this fear of playing bigger and higher stakes was holding me back. And to be frank, it was costing me a lot of money. So I asked for help. I hired my first mindset coach. This was my first introduction to hypnosis and hypnotherapy. And Not only did she radically help me transform my game on the poker table, but she helped me even more in my personal and professional life. So much so that I still work with her to this day, going on 6 years. B, I was so transformed and so positively impacted by hypnosis. I walked away from nutrition coaching and I doubled down, earning my credential, mentoring under some of the top hypnotherapists in the world. And that's why we're here today.
Okay, okay, that's amazing. You've got a lot of, I mean, the best stories and the best in kind of, um, I guess, occupational stories is because I wanted it, because I loved it, because it helped me, right? That's my own
Hmm.
story. Is I got here because of my golf experience and how I learned all of this stuff. So that's uh that's awesome. So I guess a few things just to get this out of the way because it's just an interesting thing and maybe it could be insightful to people is about diet. So you
Uh-huh.
probably know a thing or two. So I don't know. While we're here, what's uh what's a common mistake kind of the run of the mill amateur golfer makes with diet in relation to golf?
Well, it's the beer and the hot dog at the turn.
No, no, no one does that. I definitely don't do that.
I've
Definitely
never done that.
not. Okay.
No, I think, the biggest low-hanging fruit for somebody to really dial in their nutrition is just simply having a plan. So many people,
Mhm.
they have a last second tea time because they get invited to a scramble or a round out with their buddies, or even if they have the tea time on the calendar, they're so rushed. They might have a significant other and children they got to prioritize taking care of first, that by the time they get out the door, it's, oh shit, I just have time for coffee and energy drink, and I'll grab something from the cart girl on the third or sixth hole. So having a plan is like the biggest opportunity to ensure that you have some, I call it premium fuel in your body to not only help you optimize your physical readiness, but your mental readiness as well. You and I both know how important the concentration, focus, and mental discipline is. Your body needs fuel to make that happen. So having a plan is by far the easiest low hanging fruit opportunity to begin improving.
Yeah, just planning ahead. I talk about that with practice planning a lot. You show up and make emotional decisions with food, show up and make emotional decisions, and that's a pretty easy mistake to make. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if I had to give your listeners one other, tidbit there, I'd say like, as time permits, I know most of us, right now in Florida, it's 90 plus degrees. So my tea times are 6:37 in the morning. So
Mm.
we don't always want to have this big breakfast before. Uh, i- if time allows, an hour, 2 hours before, get a little protein, a high fiber, slow digesting carbohydrate in your body, and then just eat light with food you already know sits well during the rest of your round. Don't be trying all this new food or my buddy's got this or this drink because you have no idea how your digestive system is going to respond. And any bit of discomfort or unsettled feeling is absolutely going to influence both your swing and your score.
Yeah, yeah, and your distraction, right? Where's the nearest bathroom, right? So,
Yeah.
okay, so another, I appreciate that on the diet. I think that'll be
Yeah.
some good help for people, and you have a lot of expertise in it, so that's cool. Something else you mentioned was the scarcity mentality that you battled through when in your pro poker playing, and
Mm-hmm.
I can that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's a relatable thing. So now, since we're talking about golf here, I don't know. Do you think there's any parallels in golf with scarcity mentality? I know it's not as monetary related for most of us. You know, pro golfers probably do struggle with this. I know they do. So I don't know if someone had a scarcity mentality in golf or as a person, how would it
Mm-hmm.
affect their game? I mean, do you have any theories or thoughts on that?
Yeah, two hypotheses come to mind. Number one is, think about this, the new parent, the single guy who's been able to golf whenever, as much as he wants. Now he's, married, he's a new dad, he's got a family. His golf time is limited. So something I often observe in those I work with is the scarcity begins to manifest in how often I can play. Like I can only play once a month now, twice a month. I need to make the most of this time. I'm pressed for time. I inevitably create this false sense of urgency that I have to maximize my 4 hours. But what ends up happening is I play fast, I play rushed, I play, with just this general underlying feeling like, oh my gosh, it's going to be over before I know it. And before we do know it, it's over in a blink of an eye, we don't enjoy it, and then we grow frustrated. So that's one way it comes out. Number two, and I even noticed this a little bit in myself right now. Like, I didn't play for 15 years after playing quite a bit growing up, and my expectation of where I want to be and where I should be is just not quite in alignment with where I am in reality right now. So there's a scarcity, like, oh my gosh, I'm so far behind. There's not enough time. Like, oh my gosh, like time is gonna pass by me before I reach my goal of, breaking 90, breaking 80, etc. And that too instills a sense of false urgency and false pressure that disrupts practice, disrupts focus, and leads to distraction and poor discipline.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really well said. The scarcity of time and scarcity of skill, right? Both of those
Mm-hmm.
are I don't know. I know you've been interacting with me on Twitter, but you sound like you're describing me. It's a little bit personal. You're hitting a little close to home there. But because I absolutely struggle with those scarcity things, and I kind of have that all or nothing mentality of, well, if I can't practice all the time, then I'm not going to practice at all. And that's born out of that scarcity mentality, and that's something I have to work on and change.
And it's interesting too. You raised a good point. Like, I know we were talking about, like, you were doing such an awesome job. Like, I loved this thread you had, like breaking down your practice routine. And like, like, golf is part of your identity, like with your longstanding career. And now as priorities change and life shifts, like, I can only imagine how deeply embedded golf is in your identity. Like, the fact that you're not able to play in practice as much as you prefer to, like, that eats away at you. That just like highlights the lack, like, oh my gosh, I can't do what I used to. There's an identity incongruency there, which, we peel back all sorts of layers of frustration related to that.
Yeah, I just had a like a therapy counseling session yesterday, and we talked about that, how I'm still kind of grieving that, the loss of my independence and the loss of my um control over time. And she aptly pointed out that that's a control thing, right? It's a fear of letting go of that control. So you're hitting the nail on the head. Um yeah, so do you, I guess, for before we jump into the maybe the real meat here, I want to talk about you and your own kind of non-professional, you know, do you play golf? It sounded like you do play golf now. How's your
Mhm.
game? Like, how's your time? Like, how do you balance your time and get to practice the most you can, or all that stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's quite an interesting challenge. So as I mentioned, like, I started playing when I was probably 7 or 8 years old, played religiously up throughout high school. It was, we played a lot of nine holes there. I was shooting low 40s on nine consistently in high school. Absolutely loved it. Life happened, didn't touch my clubs but one time for 15 years. And as like, to be frank, like, I worked primarily with business owners and entrepreneurs and professional poker players in my coaching. A couple golfers just happened to fall in my lap by word of mouth, and I forgot how much I love the game. I still
Mm.
watched, I just never played. So I got back into it in April. So literally right in time I was reaching
Oh,
out to
nice.
you, because I had been working with a lot of clients for so long, and I was just like, it's either now or never. You're either going to play now or life's going to pass you by. You're going to have 3 kids and never be able to play. So I started playing. I bought a 4 pack of lessons with this local guy, and I just told him, I want you to teach me like I've never picked up a club before. I want pure fundamentals and basics. And as you can imagine, grip, alignment, stance, grip, alignment, stance. That is all we worked on. And I made a goal. I was going to play 5 rounds of 9 holes, knowing I'm very physically fit and active, but the rotation, I know my body needed some time to acclimate to all of that.
Yeah.
And I'm at a point now where things are starting to click and come back. I just broke 100 for the first time last week.
Nice.
I'm playing,
Congrats.
thank you. Yeah, I'm playing 18 at least once, if not twice a week, and getting one practice session in. But as you alluded to, like, I'm starting to run up to the time challenges. Like, I want to play all day, every day. I've got a baby on the way in November.
Oh,
I've got
wow.
a
Congrats
business
again.
to run. Thank you. And it's like, there are only 24 hours in a day. How do I manage my time? How do I prioritize quality over quantity? And that's the lens I'm trying to view all of my practice through, is quality over quantity. And to be frank, it is a struggle. I think, learning from people, you having the experience I have, makes it easier, but I'd be lying if I said it was easy.
It's not easy. No, I think, I mean, as I get older and my little guy's almost 2, time is
Okay.
easily the most scarce feeling thing, right? We all have the same amount of time, but mine to me feels more scarce. And that's,
Mhm.
um, I don't know, it's not true. And a recent episode of the Mental Golf Show where I had a couple of the Australian guys on, and we talked about kind of our struggle with time and young kids and that whole thing. My main frustration is all life is blocking me from golf, right? And it still feels like that, and it's still very
Mhm.
frustrating like that. So I have to reframe it to say, uh, there's life, and golf is part of life, right? There's work,
Mhm.
kids, wife, and golf, and they're not competing with each other. They're all in a line, and I get to enjoy all these things. Some things less than they used to be. So that reframe has, I'm trying to work that into my actual belief system, and it's taken
Yeah.
some time.
Well, I love what you said, and I don't even know if you caught that you said this, but you specifically said, "I get to," not "I
Yeah.
have to." Like, that is so powerful. Like, I harp on people all the time for the subtleties in our word choice because they carry so much power, and, like, even your body language, I imagine if you said, "I have to," is dramatically different and negative versus, like, "I get to still spend time with my wife, my son, play golf." Like, that makes a huge difference. Like, your
Mhm.
body internalizes that, and I just love hearing you reflect
Yeah.
that out.
Yeah. So that's still a very malleable thing for me. It's a
Mhm.
continuing work in progress. It's something that I mean, like you said, the identity thing, and how long that has taken to for me to change. So I'm in the process of that. So maybe everyone's kind of learning along with me with that. But okay, so hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
That's the thing that stood out the most from what you sent to me, and obviously how you would describe your job title to somebody.
Mhm.
That's at the forefront. So I guess how I'd like to talk about it is I'll start with maybe my conception of it,
Mhm.
and then you can either tell me how flat out wrong I am, or how no, you're actually pretty close, or whatever it is. And then I got plenty of questions about it. But
Yeah.
okay, my conception of hypnosis, not the classic stage stuff. That's not my conception of
Mhm.
it. Mine would be, you speak with a hypnotherapist, and they I guess the end result is you are your mind is changed without you even realizing it was changed, and something was done to you, or the way that you talked, or the way that words were exchanged, your mind changed, and you had very little choice in the change. And I know
Mhm.
that borders on the stagecraft type of thing of like, I'm gonna snap and you're gonna believe this thing. But I guess the conception is kind of the speed part of it, of
Mhm.
we're gonna work together, and your beliefs will change today. And that part might be true, I'm not sure. So that's kind of my conception of it. It's pretty vague, but I don't know, based on my conception of it, how would you describe it, against what I'm saying or with it?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. There's some elements of truth in what you're sharing. There's a lot more nuance and complexity that I hope to make incredibly simple and clear here. So I
Yeah,
think right
please.
out the gate, let's further just clarify what hypnosis is not. We've alluded to it, but let's be incredibly clear. It is not mind control. It is not
Mm.
brainwashing. It's not me getting you to cluck like a chicken, unless you really want me to. I guess we could.
That's your
Um,
goal.
yeah, right. It's not me, waving a pocket watch in front of you, yelling the word sleep at you. It's none of those things. And yes, that is stage hypnotism, and it's entertaining and it's fun, but it's absolutely nothing like we would do in a session together. So the first thing I like to do is what is hypnosis? Let's define it now that we know what it's not. The way that I describe it is it's a state of deep relaxation with the intention to make positive change. Now, here's one nuance I want to clarify for you. Every step of the way, like if we were working together, you are awake, you are alert, you are conscious, and most importantly, you are in control. I am merely the guide. So with that said, there are two, the power, the beauty, the magic, if you will, of hypnosis is related to two major benefits that we achieve when we're in that deeply relaxed hypnotic state. So first and foremost, when we're in that hypnotic state, we're able to bypass that critical judgmental voice of your conscious mind, that voice that says that'll never work, you're stupid, why bother. We get to bypass all of that nonsense and negativity. And two, we're able to connect directly with your subconscious mind, which is not only home to your creativity, imagination, intuition, it's also home to your memories, your beliefs, your emotions, and your habits. So hypnosis is a fast and effective way to uncover the origin of learned emotions and learned behaviors that are no longer serving you. So if we quickly bring it back to the golf course, that pressure you feel to not three putt, to putt for the tournament victory on 18, like pressure, anxiety, and stress, those are normal physiological responses to a degree, but your relationship with them and the intensity at which you experience them are learned responses. If we go maybe a little bit back further to the golfer who's earlier in their journey, the slew of curse words and negative reactions after hitting out of bounds or having a mishit, that unconscious reaction of anger and frustration, that's a learned response, which means it can be unlearned. So through hypnosis, we uncover the origin of these learned responses. When, why, how did they come to be? Most often, it's either during childhood or a traumatic or significant experience in your life. And instead, we're able to unlearn them and upgrade them so that now there is congruency and these behaviors and beliefs are in alignment with who you want to be or who you desire to be, and they begin to work for you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. That is a simplified version. I appreciate that. So I guess you know, I don't know how many of us listening, or I know I do. I go to I'll do air quotes traditional therapy or
Mhm.
counseling. But it sounds like hypnotherapy in a lot of ways is very similar to that. You're speaking to someone face to face and working through things that you struggle with, rules that you've created and agreed to in your past. How does hypnotherapy differ from traditional, again, air quotes, therapy
Yep.
or counseling, that kind of thing? How does it differ?
That's a great question. And I want to preface this question with I am a believer in traditional therapy.
Yeah.
I've used it personally. I loved my therapist when I had her. She was tremendous. So I'm going to highlight some research, and it may come across like I am not feeling that way, but I'd like to put that out there. Traditional therapy has its place. And most important, and I know you can attest to this, whether a coach or a therapist, finding the right fit, finding the right person is a
Mm.
game changer, can have such a positive impact on your life. Now, the biggest difference between traditional talk therapy and hypnotherapy is in a traditional talk therapy session, it's all occurring at the conscious level. We're just having a conversation here. And if we use the analogy of the brain, your brain being filled with these highways of neural pathways that are just, continuously paved over to reinforce one negative thought, belief, or behavior. When we have conscious talk therapy, too often we get stuck in this pattern of just re-ingraining these negative thought loops and downward spirals. So if we use this analogy of your brain as a neural network of different highways of neural pathways, consider hypnosis or hypnotherapy to be like putting out a set of orange detour cones to go create your own new pathway or highway of a desired belief and behavior. Now,
Mm.
with that said, the biggest difference between talk therapy and hypnotherapy is speed of results. So there's this really cool study. It was a big research review, and believe it or not, it was published more than 50 years ago in 1970. What researchers looked at was the average impact or recovery rate between participants in traditional talk therapy and hypnotherapy. And what they found was, on average, those participating in traditional talk therapy experienced a 38% positive impact. Nothing to write home about. It's fair. But the average timeline for those results was 600 sessions. That's 10 years of weekly therapy.
Yeah.
Now, we contrast that. The participants undergoing hypnotherapy experienced a 93% positive impact, which is pretty damn good,
Hmm.
after an average of 6 sessions.
No kidding.
Again, night and day difference. And really what's happening here is we're capitalizing on neuroplasticity, which is your brain's malleability, its ability to change, to rewire, to let go of beliefs, behaviors, and habits, and to form new one. But number two, if you recall back to that period of time when you were younger than 7, when you wanted to be the astronaut, the professional baseball player, you felt like you could do anything you wanted to and nobody could ever tell you no or knock your confidence down. That is a brain state called theta brainwave function. That is when you are walking around, you're incredibly open-minded, confident, malleable, and suggestible. Hypnosis is nothing more than returning to that state, letting go of the beliefs and behaviors that you learned as a child to protect yourself that no longer serve you, and replacing them with ones that are aligned with who you want to be and where you're going.
Okay. Yeah, and one of the things you said in an article that you wrote that you sent to me was how hypnosis or hypnotherapy is meditation with a goal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that concept where uh, the meditative state of that kind of uh, slow frequency brainwaves, and correct me if I get any of my terminology wrong, but the kind of the theta brainwaves that you're talking about, but we have a purpose for doing this, and the redirecting of the highway of the the heavily ingrained neuron pathway, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we're saying, okay, that's what we're used to doing. That's the habit that we're stuck in. So let's revert that and change that. So I guess let's throw a bone to traditional
Mm-hmm.
talk therapy. Is there is there any form of talk therapy or value in it that can do that, or is it really that can't touch it? Only hypnotherapy can do this.
That's a great point. So sometimes I feel like traditional talk therapists don't get enough credit because they wear a therapist hat, but they're also doubling as a coach. And I think that's where you get into the difference of finding like your ideal fit as a therapist slash coach, whatever they want to be known as for their profession or you call them. So yes, like that the outstanding traditionally trained therapist who wears the coaching hat can give you that perspective, that insight, help you get rid of or get out of your own way and make you privy to what you couldn't see with those blinders and that narrow tunnel vision focus you had. Now, that's all well and good. It still requires action and whatnot. And what most people find, I'm going to generalize here, so it doesn't apply to every situation, is even with the best of the best coaches and therapists, there may still be a little bit of a longer time for implementation, embodiment, and integration. So hypnotherapy really offers that nuanced benefit there of just speed to effective, lasting change.
Okay. Yeah. So it's the speed is really a pretty primary difference.
I would say that's a great way to summarize the difference.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess some people could see, okay, well, speed implies that it's not going to stick, right? That could be a pretty
Mm-hmm.
common rebuttal, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And I might have that of, because in my own past, and you and I have interacted about this on Twitter, is change takes a lot of time, right? As like if we're just talking golf swing change, it takes a lot of time, or
Yeah.
it can take a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to, I guess, but in my own personal life, it took a lot of effort, and yes, and I never replied to your most recent comment on a tweet, but you said, is there something that you could have done to, or something that you could use now that could accelerate progress, something along those
Mm-hmm.
lines?
Yep. Bingo.
So, so in the golf swing, in my own experience, it takes a long time to make a change. So
Mm-hmm.
that to me, and maybe this is an old rule of mine that I've agreed to, is that change takes time and change takes incredible intensity and focus and effort and lots of lessons and lots of range sessions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how would that um, argument or rebuttal, how would you talk to that kind of thought?
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm so happy you brought up this discussion. So I do think in some regards that is a rule that's limiting yourself. Change doesn't have to take X amount of time, hours, reps, or invested number of dollars. We're conditioned, and more often than not, that change is hard and takes long. But the truth of the matter is, and really at the end of the day, change is simple. Simple is not the same as easy. And
Mm.
the reason, if we live in a time where there's no shortage of information, we go to Google, we find everything from, best protein donut to NASA's blueprint for a literal rocket ship in a millisecond. So, the problem we run up to when we're trying to ascend to the next best level of our golf game or just of who we are as an individual, it's not an information problem. It's a mindset problem. And what happens here, if we use the golf swing as an example, what I often find I have to help my clients work with is diffusing the toxic emotions that are stuck, the frustration, the anger, this is too hard, I'm not good enough, it's going to take forever. So there's impatience, there's lack there. It's diffusing the emotion that allows them to remain focused, present, and in that flow state, which flow state hypnosis, I mean, basically mirror images of one another where they are more receptive to learning faster. But the truth of the matter is, it's the emotions, the limiting beliefs, and what I call destructive mindset programs that keep us stuck thinking that something has to be a certain way, when at the end of the day, that new perspective, and if we can diffuse some of that invisible gravitational like resistance we come up to, even though we know what to do, we just struggle to do it. That's when change becomes easy and change becomes fast.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's in a way it's kind of maybe either taking off your glasses and putting on new ones to change your perspective on, whoa, I was viewing the world this way. It's not this way. Or I didn't have glasses on and now I put on glasses. It was right. It was
Yeah.
blurry. I couldn't see things. Is that a
That's a
decent way to
great
put
way
it?
to think about it. Yeah, and there's a book out there. It's one of my most gifted books. It's by a gentleman named Vishen Lakhiani. It's called The Code of the Extraordinary Mind. And he has this chapter on there. He calls these society-led rules. He calls them brules, BRULES. Bullshit rules is his whole thing here. And it's like we've been conditioned to believe like these are the way things are done. This is the only way to do it. Change has to be this way. Progress, it takes this long to break 100, 90, 80, shoot, scratch, etc. But why does that have to be the truth? So, what I often hear myself repeating time and time again is like, how can we examine these beliefs and rules we have through a lens of non-judgmental curiosity and ask if they reign true in our lives? Maybe at one point they were true, and maybe we adapted them because they kept us safe. They kept us meeting our childhood needs of acceptance, belonging, connection. But now, here as an adult, when we no longer need to work to survive, we want to work to thrive, they no longer serve us.
Yeah, that's a common one of those that I hear about and experience is anger, where anger as a motivator, it worked when you were young, right? It would maybe you would have a terrible round, you get really angry, and it would get you motivated to go back to the course and practice. And in a way that served you back then, when and there's debate of that probably wasn't the best way to go about it either, but it got you to the course and it helped you get better. And because any practice was better than no practice back then.
Mm-hmm.
Now you don't need to just be motivated to just go to the course. There's a quality to it, and I call it kind of revenge practice. When you're practicing out of anger, out of how a round
Mm-hmm.
went, that's not thriving anymore. That's just, I'm going to beat balls until I hopefully start hitting it well. And that's not a good way to go about it. So anger no longer serves that purpose. And there's nothing inherently wrong with, I think, being angry. It's simply an emotion as a result of a stimulus. But acting on that anger in an unhelpful way, in a way that no longer serves you, that's something that needs to be reframed. and and I see a lot of strong similarities, and I think that this the study you cited was is alluding to this, where there, talk therapy or counseling or coaching is really, I mean, it's going for the same purpose. It's just slower, or maybe less efficient in your view. and in the research that you're citing. So hypnotherapy is let's really drill in and get to this quickly. And it's almost like my back hurts, so I'm gonna just do a full body workout and hope that it fixes my back, instead of I'm gonna do the exercise that fixes my back, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think too something to point out because you hit the nail on the head there is that a lot of us know what to do, and we hire a coach for more information, but also the accountability.
Mm,
And a great coach provides so much more, and I want to make that very clear. But where we often run up to into a wall of becoming our own worst enemy is that we get stuck in fear of all the possibilities that happen when we do achieve our goal. I often go back and say to remind people like we're a tribal community centric species. Like we have three core fears wired into our DNA: fear of judgment, abandonment, and rejection. Because centuries ago, if we were judged, abandoned, or rejected and we were ostracized by our tribe, we were either eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or we starved to death. As silly and irrational as it sounds, those three core fears are more prevalent and prominent than ever before today. So you think about the golfer who is struggling to break 80. Well, his life becomes totally different when he breaks 80. Now there's an expectation and there's a pressure. His training schedule needs to change. Who he identifies and connects with might change. There is a potential threat of losing his identity. And when we take a step back, it's an identity ascension in most cases. But the subconscious, wired to protect you and keep you safe, views this as a threat, and it will deploy several destructive mechanisms to bring you back into that zone of comfort. And we have to just be very aware that we know what to do, or we can go quickly learn what to do. Yet, a lot of the times, underneath why we don't do it is a feeling of fear or a feeling of shame or a feeling of doubt that keeps us stuck in this familiar pattern of two steps forward. I have a couple good rounds and then I have a couple blow up rounds. I have a couple good
mm,
holes and I blow up on 7 and 8 and I come back in at my normal 45 for 9.
yeah. So someone commented on Twitter, and you talk about this fear. I put out a question this morning, and a person replied. They said, "My current demons are fear of failure on the course and too much self pressure, as well as a loss of confidence during a slump that has been the result of the fear of failure and the self pressure." So, with fear of failure, where do you think that fits into this? Those kind of three core fears. So, a common fear of failure would be, and fear of failing to break 80, right, to your
Mhm.
example, but a fear of failure would be I've got a great round going and I have a fear of losing that good round.
Mm.
So that person
Scarcity
that
right
has,
there for
yeah,
losing
exactly.
the greatness. Sorry, but go
Right.
ahead.
So there, no, that might be at the core of this here, but so someone who has that fear of failure, maybe someone comes to you and said, "I'm terrified whenever I have a good round going, and I'm scared to death I'm going to lose it, and then I always lose it." How would you talk to that person?
Comes down to their core belief of what they believe they are worthy, deserving, and capable of. So often this fear of failure is masking fear of success. So one way to look at it is deep down, they don't believe they're worthy, deserving, and capable of breaking 90, 80, shooting scratch, whatever it may be. And again, we say it right here logically, consciously, rationally. It sounds silly. Like, of course I believe it. But like, no, I find it so common that really at the end of the day, like through childhood experiences that again seem silly when we think and reflect back on them. But in the moment, they were so pivotal in shaping the belief system you harbored as a young boy or girl. It does come down to a lack of, I truly believe I am deserving and capable of achieving a goal. And that will ultimately lead to continuing to self sabotage because you always revert back or default back to what you believe subconsciously you're deserving, capable, or worthy of. Two, it goes back to that fear of success paradigm I mentioned. If you do start shooting in the high 70s and your playing group is, high 80s, low 90s group, like maybe there's judgment, maybe there's tension, maybe there's animosity, jealousy, envy. And again, it sounds a little silly, but we are a community centric species. Maybe your core foursome doesn't want to play with you as much anymore. And that is a huge threat to the ego, to your identity, and your sense of belonging. So you will subconsciously sabotage to make sure you shoot just close enough to what your peers are shooting so you still feel like you belong.
Yeah, there is that, and it feels wrong, but I don't want to make other people feel like they don't belong with me by playing too good. And
Bingo.
a lot of people probably struggle with the other end of it. It seems like more people fear I'm going to play so bad that they won't want to play with. They want to drag me along with them. I'm not good enough. I need to hurry up and play fast so that I don't hold them back, those kind of things. And if I shank this, now I got to go look for a ball and they got to help me look for the ball.
Mhm.
So I have this incredible fear that I'm going to make a mistake with these people and be ostracized. And almost always that's a kind of a perception, right? That's just a perception of
Yeah.
what you think they're thinking of you. And if you really like ask them, they want what's best for you, right? They want you to play well. They don't want you to play so bad that they kick you out. And they're not
Yeah.
judging you for how slowly you're playing. Almost always, unless you truly are playing very very slow, then there's rules for that. You should pick it up. But
Yeah.
almost always it's a perception and limiting belief and deeper core view of I'm not worthy of being with these people, right? So
Mhm.
I need to overcompensate so that I feel worthy to be with these people.
Yeah, spot on. Like I totally agree there. And to pivot right back to the point of like this opposite end, this fear of success. I have a name for this. It's
Mm,
kind of like this fear of shining your light, feel of being seen at this level of
yeah.
success. And I'll tell a quick story to illustrate this point, which also illustrates just kind of how crazy the subconscious mind is. I have a client of mine. He's a professional poker player. When he was growing up, his dad was a drunk. He was in and out of his life. And around the age of 8 years old, his dad started showing up and coming back into his life a little bit more consistently. And his dad one day sat him down and was like, I'd love to teach you to play the game of chess. So every day after school, my client would race home off the school bus and sit down and play a couple hours of chess with his dad. Within a couple of weeks, he started to beat his dad consistently. Well, as you can imagine, dad didn't like that. Dad stopped coming around as inconsistently. And for that 8-year-old boy who worships and idolizes and admires his father, who was already inconsistently coming around, he starts coming around more. That little boy internalized a belief, as silly as that sounds, it's not safe to win. And he carried that with him throughout his life and in his career. And on the poker table, it was every time he got really close to the bubble of making the money, he would freak out and do things that, looking at them logically, why in the world would I make such a decision? Every time he got close to making a final table, it was the same emotional and mental blow up. There was a literal belief there that it is not safe to shine my light and to have success and all eyes on me. And we had to work through that. And it takes time, but now, he's making final tables and making the money quite regularly and having much more success now that he's released that belief.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's beautiful. So back to yourself, and you, like you said, you kind of just picked it back up in April, picked golf back up in
Mm-hmm.
April, and you just broke 100 for the first time recently. You said last week. So that's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. You're seeing quick progress. That's really cool. So with your own journey through hypnotherapy and your own work with that woman that you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, how has that related to your own? Are you kind of looking at your own little thing as maybe I'm gonna experiment and see how this can help me, or is it just I've been doing this so long, so it's just who I am? I don't know. How do you think of hypnotherapy in relation to your own golf game?
Yeah, so it's definitely an action and a habit that I put into place just as much as I preach it. So for me, one typical concept when someone who thinks about hypnotherapy is maybe they equate it to visualization. Visualization is absolutely an element. I would say there's two mistakes people make in visualization that if you correct these mistakes, it becomes infinitely more powerful. Number one, rather than just seeing yourself hit a good shot or play a great hole or round, you need to invoke every one of your five senses. You need to
Mm,
smell the grass, you need to hear the lawn guy 3 holes over. You need to feel the weight and the grip of your club in your hand. You need to invoke every single sense to make it as real as possible. And then two, the low hanging fruit I'll share with you is you need to visualize making mistakes and having
Mm,
poor shots. You know better than I do. Golf is not a game of perfect. So mistakes are going to happen. You're going to hit the best shot in the world and it's going to take a weird bounce and you're going to be 4 feet into the 3 inch thick rough. And it's like, okay. So you need to visualize mistakes and rebounding and recollecting yourself as well. So for me, before my rounds, I am listening to, which is so weird to still do, and my own play your best round guided meditation hypnosis that I share with people online. I listen to it myself. I
mhm.
go through a lot of breath work before, and I have a lot of breath work strategies I use during my round as well, just to turn down the volume of my emotional brain, put me back in the driver's seat of decisions for the remainder of my round. So I try to practice what I preach, understanding I'm an emotional being and I'm human as well, but I do it as often as I can.
That's awesome. I love the visualizing mistakes. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, or recently at least, I've talked a lot about embracing failure, embracing
Mm-hmm.
mistakes. Mistakes are good. Mistakes are okay and normal, and destigmatize failure and mistakes, and not just have a better view of them, but look at them and kind of foreshadow them and forecast them. And like you said, visualize them and put yourself in that position, and mentally work through, how will I handle this? What will it feel like to experience this adversity or these obstacles? And I'm going to mentally work through that outside of the round of golf so that when I get there, one, I'm not surprised, and two, I'm equipped to be able to, like, I've done this before. I've handled this before, and I feel ready. So that's visualizing failure and mistakes is a huge one that I think no one assumes would be helpful, but
Yeah.
I think it's I think it's much more realistic and helpful than, everything's going to go well and here's exactly how well it's going to go, and I'm never going to make a mistake, and I'm going to hit the first tee shot so well, and I'm going to be calm and relaxed, and I'm going to have fun the entire 18 holes. That would feel nice, but it's incredibly unrealistic.
Bingo. Then it creates a huge gap between expectation and reality. And that gap
Mm.
invites in frustration and anger. And then it's like, this game sucks. Why bother? You think the meditation, the visualization, the hypnosis doesn't work. So you don't do that. You have less fun playing. You stop practicing as often. And now we're in this downward spiral of negativity. And that's not where we want to be.
No, no, no. Okay, cool. So you said you've been working with this hypnotherapist on yourself for
Mhm.
6 years. So if someone, imagine someone hearing that and saying, "Oh, I thought it was supposed to be fast. I thought it was supposed to be, you know, 5 sessions, and I'm different and I'm changed. So how come you continue to go and continue to do the hypnotherapy?"
So the cliche that I'll first use to answer is, with every new level comes a new devil. I don't know what challenges await me when I hit my next goal. And that is very truthful. You know, for me, she helped me tremendously in my poker game. I decided, and COVID kind of helped solidify the decision to walk away from poker. I already had a great coaching business, but I needed that to evolve and look differently. I've pivoted. I walked away from a clientele I served for more than 10 years to focus on different clientele. So there's, as someone listening to the show, you the listener, like, it's very obvious, like, you are trying to be the best version of you. You're literally sitting down to listen to something to better yourself. So as you keep going and growing, like, you have this passion within you where you're wired to want to do, achieve, and be more. I'm the same way. And as I aspire to do more, accomplish more, like, I'm peeling back more layers of myself that unveil some hard and uncomfortable things at times, aspects of myself that maybe didn't get in my way when I was at a different level in my journey. But now at this level, it's the number one thing holding me back from the fulfillment or whatever goal I'm working toward. And I think that's important to keep in mind too, is like, when I was young, I was chasing dollars, dollars, dollars. My goals look dramatically different now. So I have to learn new skill sets. I have to learn how to harness things that I thought were weaknesses that are now superpowers, and vice versa. So long-winded answer to say, I'm always evolving and growing. I want someone there with me every step of the way to challenge me and help me address at the or what might be slowing me down.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Okay, so you, like we said, you recently broke 100. You're getting better. So as you go practice and play now, how do you view your future improvement? Do you do you have a timeline for yourself? Like what's next for you? Do you have competitive aspirations? You know, what's next for Paul and his golf? What how do you view that?
Yeah, you ask a great question, Josh. What I'm wrestling with. So my challenge is I should be, shooting par tomorrow. Um, you and I both know that is not realistic. And
No.
so that my struggle is speed of results
Mm,
and reminding myself I want to play this game for the rest of my life. I don't need to shoot par tomorrow. So really where I'm at in my journey is solidifying my why and what role I want golf to play in my life moving forward. So I do have competitive aspirations, and it's purely because I want to see what version of me competition brings out. I think it's a wonderful reflection to learn more about yourself and
it
where you
is.
are in life. So that's my reason for wanting competition. As far as short-term goals, the goal is to break 90 by the time my son is here, which gives
Mm,
me like almost 4 months to the date. So I'm very confident there. At that time, I imagine the frequency of golf will decrease for an unspecified amount of time. So
hmm
I'll set a more realistic goal once I have clarity on what that looks like. But I would say within the next 12 months, I will be breaking 80, and I will compete at least once in the next 12 months. In whatever
mm.
fashion that looks like, I don't know, but that's where my sights are set.
Okay, I love that. That's I like your goals, and I think 4 months to break the next kind of 10 shot barrier. That's ambitious, but
Mhm.
why not? Right. So I
Yeah.
think that's and if you don't meet it, I'm sure you'll be okay. Right. You've developed your mental strength and you're able to ability to handle adversity to say that's okay. I'm okay. Right. That's
Yeah.
the underlying thing here is I there is no scarcity ultimately of time, and I promise from and I've got a little bit of a head start on you right now. There will
Mhm.
be a strong feeling of a scarcity of time, and
Yeah.
and that's okay for a time, and going in with acceptance, right? So that's I think that's a really good relatable thing to people of set ambitious goals, go for them, and then be realistic how they ultimately play out. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you feel like you have a pretty good handle on this is what I want, but I'll be okay no matter what? Is that kind of how you go about it?
That's a great point. I was going to highlight that. I love how you asked that because I think it's important for everyone listening to have their definitive why behind why they play the game of golf, or maybe a better way to phrase it is what role do you want golf to play in
Mm,
your life? So in my first round of 9 out, like a couple of months ago, the first 5 holes, I was so anxious and tense. I felt this false sense of urgency. This foursome was riding our ass the whole time. It was like,
mm,
this is my first welcome back to golf. And I was like, that will never be my experience again. My priority is to enjoy myself and have fun. And then two, like I just mentioned, competition is a mirror of self-growth and kind of a big way to see where I'm at in my own expectations of growth, progress, etc. So I'm using competition as a tool to bring out the best in me, which translates more importantly off the golf course, the best father, husband, friend, whatever it may be. So I'm clear on what role golf plays for me and why. So to your point, yes, if I don't reach my goal in my specific specified timeline, there's tomorrow, there's the next round, and I will be okay. And I might not say it as elegantly and peacefully in that moment the day of, but I have a deep belief like I will have another chance. And it's just a
yeah.
learning lesson. Wow, maybe this 4 months of approach and how I practiced X, Y, and Z and my mental approach wasn't as optimal as I thought it would be. What can I learn and take with me moving forward?
I love it. All right. Paul Salter, I appreciate it. Tell everyone where they can find you. Where do you want to send people? What do you want people to know about you or buy from you or whatever?
Yeah, no, I just want them to come hang out with me. I mean, you're kind enough to be a guest on my podcast, the
Hmm.
Scratch Golfers
Can't
Mindset
wait.
Podcast. Yeah, so check that out. And then the other one is if you like to read and consume content. I mean, I love your newsletter as well, and I'll share my More Pars Than Bogeys newsletter every Friday. Is more mindset tips, insights, and strategies to help you shoot more pars than bogeys.
I love it. I love it. And Paul has been awesome interacting with me on Twitter. So go follow him there. And again, his podcast, the Scratch Golfers Mindset Podcast. It's TSGM. This is the TMGS. We got some similar letters here. We got some similar goals with these podcasts. So, Paul, I really appreciate it. This is awesome. I'll let you get out of here. This has been really great.
Yeah, thank you so much, Josh. It was my pleasure, and I look forward to doing it again next week.
All right, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Paul. I especially like what he said toward the end about visualization, and not just visualization of things going great, but visualization of struggles and obstacles and how you're going to overcome them. Specifically, clearly visualizing things not going well and how am I going to work through those when it's time for those things to happen. That's a counterintuitive but very practical way to work on your golf psychology. And as I always mention at the end of these episodes, what you've heard isn't therapy. It's meant for information and entertainment purposes only. If you feel like you need personal help on some deeper things that you're going through, I encourage you to talk to a licensed professional. And if you have any questions or comments about these topics or working with me one on one on your golf psychology, feel free to send an email to josh@joshnicholsgolf.com. Head to my website, joshnicholsgolf.com, or you can find me and interact with me on Twitter/X and Instagram at Josh Luke Nichols. I'd also like to point you to the mental game assessment. It's a free 15-minute questionnaire that'll show you your mental strengths and areas for improvement. It's the same resource that I use with my clients. It's something that we in-house hand build and create and send back to you. So if you're waiting on your mental game assessment, it's because we've been pretty busy over here, which is cool. It's a good problem to have. And I've had several people reach out, hey, where's my mental game assessment? Well, that's because we manually do them and send them back. And so every one of your assessments passes across our desk and we send them to you manually. So it's an awesome resource. It's a cool free resource. So head to my website, joshnicholsgolf.com, or the link in the show notes to check out the mental game assessment or anything else that I've mentioned through this episode. The show notes will have those links. So check out the show notes below this episode. All right. Thanks again for listening to the Mental Golf Show. Whether you're new here or you've been here since day one, I really appreciate the community that you have been a part of building. So if you've learned something on this episode and you're listening to it, go subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, like this episode, subscribe to the channel. Those are the best ways to support the Mental Golf Show. And if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can leave us a review of up to 5 stars if you feel that we've earned it. And again, those are the best and free ways to support the podcast. So I really appreciate that. And most of all, thank you for your interest in the mental game. I'm Josh Nichols, and I'll catch you guys next time.